Well, I gotta say, of all the things that I expected to be talking about today, this was pretty low on the list. Netflix just decided that they're gonna make a live-action Zelda series. And no one really saw it coming because Nintendo is so stingy with its IP, its intellectual properties, that they've been fighting YouTubers for years. They refuse to get on board. They just don't seem to really understand, like, the age we live in. They're very old school that way. And now for this to suddenly kick in, like, they know about streaming, they know about, like, it kind of feels like that episode of South Park where they're like, oh my god, when the thieves are trying to rob a video store, and everyone's just like, don't they know Netflix exists? Like, what are they doing? Everyone seems pretty split on the idea. There's a side that's really super excited and can't wait, and then there's another side that's pretty skeptical and thinks it's a bad idea. All I can really do is kind of offer up my opinion, which is that that right now the ink on the signed document to make the series is still wet. We know nothing else about the show. All we know is that they've pitched it, they've described it as being Game of Thrones for kids, a more family-friendly Game of Thrones. So, going off of that, I am a little bit more skeptical. I'm leaning a little bit more towards the skeptical side than the positive side, because Game of Thrones, just going off of that, I know it's kind of a loose quote to go off of, but that's what they chose to come out with and to give us an idea of what to expect. And if that's what we're to expect out of this show, I am a little concerned, because Legend of Zelda, I love the series so far. I've been playing Ocarina of Time for the first time. I stream it whenever I can. But the Legend of Zelda series is incredibly basic. I don't want you to jump into the comment section thinking that I'm bashing it, because I'm not. I mean that in the best way. It's simple. There's lots of lore, there's all this huge backstory and history and all these characters and stuff like that. And that's all great, that's stuff that I love personally. But when you break it down plot point for plot point, the Legend of Zelda series is basically destined good guy defeats bad guy, saves the world. It's basically that clip from The Mummy when the old guy asks, like, what's the plan? And Brendan Fraser just says, rescue the damsel in distress, kill the bad guy, save the world. That's the entire Legend of Zelda, like. Meanwhile, on the other side, you've got Game of Thrones that is so convoluted and so full of trees of families. You got to keep track of who's from this family and which families don't get along with the others and why, and the motivations for all the characters constantly changes. There are characters in Season 1 and Season 2 that are complete opposite to what they are, you know, later on, which is a good thing. That's character development, that's the way it should be. But you do have to keep track of everything. Characters are plotting things. You almost need like a crazy man corkboard. You know, when characters in movies go nuts and they have newspaper clippings and thumbtacks drawing yarns of string back and forth. You almost need one of those to keep track with Game of Thrones. And it's great. It makes for sucking you in. It kind of makes it hard to get into at first, but you kind of see where I'm getting at, where these two things are completely different ideologies in terms of how they approach their story. A Game of Thrones, the plot is the background. The draw of Game of Thrones is seeing the characters act and react and how they interact with each other. Legend of Zelda is about a journey. It's about an adventure going from point A to point B. They're completely different things. So trying to describe that you want to make this thing more like this thing is what worries me. The fact that they're trying to make it kid-friendly doesn't really bother me. Legend of Zelda, a lot of people when they first got into Zelda were kids, so that I have no problem with. Another big controversy is the fact that Link, we don't know what he sounds like. We don't know how he talks or his diction. He talked in the cartoon series, but this thing that Netflix is making is not an adaptation of the cartoon, it's an adaptation of the game series. So a lot of controversy is going around like, well, what are they going to do? Is Link going to talk? Is he not going to talk? They'd have to be really brave and intelligent and care about their property to not make Link talk, which makes a lot of people believe that Link's going to talk. Realistically, he's probably going to talk. They're probably just gonna throw that out like day one and be like, oh, this is a different type of Link, which is horseshit. Here's the thing. In the games, Link does talk. He does. We just don't hear it. We don't hear him we don't hear the sounds, and we don't see any text in the dialogue because what he says is not important. We already know what the motivation is. We don't necessarily need to hear it. That's kind of besides the point. The bigger point is that it's left up to interpretation. It is up to you to decide what Link says, how he says it, how he interacts with these people. That's why Link is best suited in a video game setting, so that that's left open. With a movie, or I'm sorry, with any kind of visual medium like a movie or a show, that is much harder to do. It can be done, in some sense, like if you think of Dredd, not with his voice, but with his face being covered, that same kind of principle applies, where what he looks like does not matter. It is up to you to decide. To me, I interpret it as that is Dredd's face. With the helmet on, that is what his face is, but I'm getting off track. Likewise with Link, that was supposed to be left up to interpretation. And now to be flat out told that something is a certain way and it's factual and there's no way around it, that is how he sounds now, and this is how he talks, is going to be a hard pill for people to swallow, myself included. I will give props if this show comes out and Link doesn't say a frickin' thing in the entire series. I will stand up and applaud the show. I'll go out and I'll buy the box set, collector's edition, whatever, because that takes balls. And that comes right back around to that we don't know who's in charge. We don't know who's directing, writing, casting, who's starring, what have you. If we knew a little bit more about that, maybe we could determine, you know, like if it was Gendy Tartakovsky, I think is his name, the guy that did Samurai Jack, the Star Wars animated clone series, if he was brought on board, that could be really interesting, because he's done some really good, he can do a lot with not saying a word, with just images and stuff like that. He could do a lot. That would actually be kind of a perfect fit, to tell you the truth. Just because it's for kids doesn't mean it has to be loud and stupid and moronic like a lot of cartoons are. It can be still mature, just not blood and guts and sex mature. I'd like to hear the intro. I'd like to hear a big grand orchestral version of the theme, the overworld theme. What worries me about describing it as for kids is I think back to the last time that Nintendo released an animated series based on a game where the protagonist didn't talk, and it was Pokemon. And that show is horrible. Like, I appreciate the nostalgia of it, don't get me wrong, and there's some cool moments in it still, but objectively, that was a disaster of a show. They animated and they gave Ash a voice, they gave him every other anime hopeful underdog characteristic you could think of, completely generic, kind of an idiot too, because he was kind of a crummy Pokemon trainer. But the entire show was 90% filler, and then like every now and then he had a gym battle that progressed the story, the point A to point B. There's a lot of parallels you could draw between the potential Legend of Zelda and what they did with Pokemon. And I'm worried that instead of getting talent and someone that cares about the Legend of Zelda series and someone that could really do something with it, like Tartakovsky or something like that, there's other people, but instead of getting someone like that, I'm afraid that they're just going to cop out, and we're going to get the Zelda equivalent of the Pokemon animated series. It would just be like, one episode would be Link trying to figure out which of the chickens is which 3 chickens so he can earn a jar. I'm worried that the fetch questing and all the games is going to basically be fleshed out into an entire episode, and only like 10% of the time will there actually be stuff with dungeons and Zelda and Ganon and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm very skeptical. I don't know that there's a lot that could sell me on this because it's live action. Again, we don't know enough to really go off anything. We'll just kind of have to watch it as it develops and see who they get for casting, directing, writing, all that good stuff. Netflix is not infallible when it comes to its own original series either. I know that they're coming out with like Daredevil and Iron Fist and stuff like that, but that's Marvel stuff. That's not Netflix running that. That's in tandem with Marvel. When it comes to Netflix's like own original series, you remember Hemlock Grove? Remember how that shit turned out? So I don't know. Again, we'll have to just wait and see. So by all means, let's talk about it. Leave me something in the comments. I might make I'll be making some follow-up videos as this progresses, because like I said, I am really getting into the series. I've been streaming Ocarina of Time, and I would love for there to be a legit Legend of Zelda series. I just don't think it's possible. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you the next time some Zelda news comes out.